Hi guys. It's I mean, it's not that early, but it's kind of early for me. I'm just tired. I have a doctor's appointment at 10:45, I think. So I'm gonna put my makeup on while I do this video. So hit you guys with a little bit of heaviness yesterday. But we're gonna go into a little bit more of that today. So something I didn't mention yesterday was that, you know how I spoke of my my biological mother not really wanting me. So because she didn't want me, she didn't really think about, you know, things like clothes, diapers, anything like that. She didn't think of anything like that. What to name me, for one. She didn't have a name for me because why would you think of a name for someone you weren't going to keep? So when I was born and she decided, well, I'm going to keep her because I can get more welfare if I have her. You know how they give you all the paperwork you got to fill out? You got to fill out to get a social security card. You got to fill out the, you know, the name for the child, put the father on, whatnot. You know, you got a lot of paperwork they're going to give you right after you have the baby. So they give her the paperwork and she hasn't filled anything out. The nurse comes back in. You know, whenever you're done with that, I'll just take the paperwork. Didn't have it, didn't have it, didn't have it, didn't have it. Kept coming back, and finally she's like, are you having trouble trying to think of a name? And she's like, well, I don't know. And so the nurse is like, well, is there anybody in your life that means a lot to you? Or maybe somebody that's maybe touched your life. And not just somebody that you know, but maybe somebody that you don't know, like a writer or a name that's just stuck out to you in the past, and you really liked it. And she just didn't have nobody, nah, not really. So the nurse, hey, keep it down, please. So the nurse said, okay, well, what's your mom's name? And she goes, Beatrice. Okay. Puts down Beatrice as my first name. Do you have a middle name you might want? Do you even want the baby to have a middle name? She doesn't have to have a middle name. Desi, if you're gonna do that, please go in your room. Sorry, these videos will never be without me talking to my kids. They're always here. No, not, I mean, she can have a middle name, but I mean, the nurse. Okay, well, what is your mother's middle name? Louise. Alrighty, that's a pretty name. Puts it down. Mother's last name was Gallegos. Beatrice Louise Gallegos. The nurse named me. Named me after my grandma. My grandma and I had the exact same name. So my biological family always called me Baby B. That was not my name for as long as I can remember. I still have biological family. I mean, I haven't seen my biological family in years. But if I were to walk through the door, that's exactly what they would call me, Baby B. I will probably forever and always be that to them. Anyways, oh, there it is. So, I mean, she didn't really care. Like I spoke of yesterday, she didn't care what I was being named or anything like that. So that's just where I was left. So I think my aunt told me that she had given my mother all the stuff that she had saved for me since I wasn't going to her, but she didn't want it to go to waste. So, like I said yesterday, my mother was a drug addict, an alcoholic, and a prostitute. She was she would sleep with men for money, and I'm trying to keep it down because my kids. But she would also hand me over to them whenever they wanted me too. So that happened a lot. I was left alone for long periods of time. Desi, take that in the room. So I was left alone for long periods of time. I hardly ever went to school. Getting parents on truancy back then wasn't a priority for the police department. So if you weren't sending your kids to school, you could get away with it because it wasn't a huge priority to make parents send their kids to school. Oh, shoot. It's way too much. So she never got in trouble for not sending me. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So she never really got in trouble for not sending me to school. I missed copious amounts of school. She never made it a priority to feed me. I can remember distinctly being hungry all the time. That's probably where my issue with overeating came. In fact, I know it is because there were periods of time where she wouldn't bother feeding me, and I would end up having to scrounge for food when she was gone, or even when she was home and passed out in a drunken stupor. Go in the living room, please.
Hey, what do you think?
Good. Go in the living room, please. I'm eating saltine crackers with, just anything I could get my hands on that maybe was left in the house. So I think that's where my eating disorder came from. Because when I got into foster care, not my first foster home because they were very abusive, but my second foster home is when the overeating started, because I never knew that even though there was food available to me and they were feeding me and treating me good, in my head it would be taken away at any moment. You know what I mean? So I had to eat as much as I could so that I wouldn't be hungry later. That was my thinking. And then you get into this habit where you always overeat when there is food, and that's just how I was from then on. So I went into my you know what's funny is the amount of time that she had left me alone when I was actually taken away from her. She was arrested for robbing a liquor store with somebody. And she had actually left me with a neighbor that time, but I don't think it was because, oh, I don't want to leave her alone. I think she left me with him because, or them, it was a family. They had kids. I was playing with their daughter, and the mom said, just leave her here tonight. She could stay the night. Well, the police had shown up that night, in the middle of the night while we were sleeping, and, you know, told the mother, hey, you know, her mother was arrested. We got to take her in. So I went into Jameson. So I go into Jameson, and this is when I enter my first foster home. I wasn't in Jameson very long. Then I entered a foster home. And you know what's funny? I entered this foster home when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I still remember where the house is. I remember what school I went to when I was in this home, but I don't remember where we lived when I lived with my biological mother. I could not take you back to that place. We didn't live in a house. We lived in like a it's like a motel, but like for long, like people lived in it. It was weird because like the one we lived in didn't have a bathroom. So you would have to use, there were some that had bathrooms and some didn't. The one we lived in didn't have a bathroom, so you would have to go to like the floor bathroom to use the bathroom or take a shower. We lived in something like that. And I remember that they would lock the doors at a certain time because I know that downstairs they had an area that if you got back too late and the doors were locked, they had cots that you could sleep on, and we a lot of times had to sleep on those cots because she never got us home in time. Anyways, so I enter. So anyways, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Mary just went ahead and let whatever she wanted to happen to me with men. She passed me around. I can't even remember how many men. I don't know. I couldn't even tell you. I just know that it was bad, and I remember everything. That's why I said yesterday that I'm not sure what she was doing before, like when I was an infant and a baby, if she was letting this happen. I mean, if she was, oh my God. I can't even imagine the horror that I went through before I have memory. I mean, I went through horror with my memory. I remember my mom had a boyfriend, that she had dated. His name, I don't remember his real name. I remember everybody called him Lucky. Lucky, I think it was. He was the nicest man my mom had ever been with. Really nice guy. Treated me like I was his daughter. Took care of me. Protected me from her. It was the only time in my life that I was with her and wasn't hurt. Well, no, I take that back. I wasn't sexually hurt. Or and the beating and the verbal abuse was at a minimum. It was mostly when he was gone at work. I actually have a picture of him in my old pictures. I had gone home when I was 17 for my grandmother's funeral, and my Aunt Lupe had given me a bunch of pictures of me when I was a little girl, and that was one of the pictures. I think I'm sitting on his lap, and my mom is in the picture too, or Mary. But I have fond memories of him. He never hurt me. I can remember the reason we left. I had a hard time remembering what bus to get on. Because I didn't go to school often, there was no repetition for me. And I know from all the drug use that my mom did while she was pregnant with me, and then just everything, that I have a learning disability. I have something, I've never been tested for it, but I know I do. Because spelling is still hard for me. Reading, it's not that reading's hard for me, but like when I'm reading something, I will switch the first and the last letter in a word. My eyes just switch it, and I'm reading, I'm like, what is that? And then I realize, oh, that's not what I thought it was. And then I gotta reread it. It's why it takes me forever to read anything. Anyways, so what was I saying? I keep losing my train of thought. Ugh. Oh, I'm sorry. I like dead time. Oh, school. So, I didn't go to school often, and I had this kid that lived near me, and he would always make sure I got on the right bus. Hey, this is the bus we get on. Well, he didn't ride the bus that day. He went somewhere else, and I got on the wrong bus. And I rode the bus all the way into the last stop, and then I got off because I didn't know what else to do. And then I ended up having to walk home, like from a really far distance. But luckily, I was able to find home. I mean, yeah, I had to walk really far, but I found where I was going. Well, by the time I got home, my mom was livid. Livid. Lucky wasn't home, so my mom just, the heck? Sorry, I'm like, she was mad. So, she started beating me with the belt. And it didn't matter that the handle or the buckle side, she had a huge belt that the buckle end was flying. And I was trying to run from her and hide on the other side of the bed, and she just started swinging it and hitting me. Well, Lucky got home and found me hiding on the side of the bed crying, covered in blood and bruises, and he went off and started beating the ever-loving shit out of my mother. I don't condone hitting women, but in that instance, I kind of give him leadway. He was protecting me. My sides don't want to blend. So he beat the crap out of her for her hitting me or doing what she had done to me. And she hid in the bathroom. I can remember her hiding in the bathroom and him saying, you know, I'll never let her hurt you again. But he went to work the next day and she packed up our shit and we left. I never saw him again. I always wonder if he looked for us. I was so little. And also during, I don't know, not during that time. I remember right after that, we had ran and stayed with one of my mother's friends. It was a Mexican family. And just to give you an idea of what kind of person my mother was. I mean, if you haven't even already realized what kind of person she was. We were playing outside and my mom and her friends were inside watching a scary movie. And they did not want us watching the movie. But kids being kids, we kept knocking on the door, messing with them. And they would open the door. Hey, stop knocking on the door, you know. That's enough. Go play. Well, we're not going to play. We just kept doing it. Well, they opened the door, and I had stuck my hands in the side with the hinges for the door to swing open, and they didn't realize that my fingers were in the door, and they shut the door. It was a big, heavy wooden door. And when they shut the door, this finger got stuck in it. This finger looks different from this one. The end of my finger got cut off. And I'm standing there and I'm screaming, and the kid is like, he's like frozen because he's like my size. And I had to reach over as a small child and open the door because I couldn't get my hand out. And I remember when I opened the door, the end of my finger fell down the crack of the door. And I'm just screaming and blood is going everywhere. Well, my mother grabbed me and they wrapped a towel around my hand and they rushed me into the car to go to the ER. Well, while we're in the car, my mother is yelling at me to stop screaming, that I'm making a scene. Now keep in mind, I was taken away from her when I was like 7, 8. So this is before that. I don't remember what age I was. I just remember I was small. Maybe 4 or 5 years old. And she's yelling at me to be quiet. So I'm trying my best to be quiet. I mean, that just shows she was just that kind of person. She was just hateful and mean and ugly and gross, and I dealt with that all the time from her. But I loved her unconditionally. It didn't matter what she did, I still loved her. Like, she could do all these horrible things and it didn't matter because she was my mother and I was going to stand by her. It's almost like, I mean, not almost, it is basically Stockholm Syndrome. You know? So then I came to my first foster home, and I don't know, I don't have that much to say about them because I don't have that much memory of them. I didn't stay with them that long. They were abusive. They hit me all the time. And at the time, I was young. I didn't know that foster parents were not allowed to hit foster kids. I just knew my mother hit me, and I thought adults were allowed to hit kids. So I never said anything to anybody. I just let it happen, and I just dealt with it. Well, when I was going to school, I had fallen off the monkey bars and I broke my ankle. And my foster mom, I remember she was a housekeeper, and they had to call her from her job to come and get me, and she was so mad. So she took me back to her work, and I had to sit there all day while she finished working before she would take me to the hospital. So she took me to the doctor, and I had a broken leg, and they put a cast on it, and took the time it healed, and that was awful. And I remember talking to a friend at school, and I was telling her what was going on, and she goes, "They're not allowed to hit you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she goes, I don't know if she just had experience with other friends being foster kids, or I don't know. But she said foster parents are not allowed to hit foster kids. They're not supposed to be hitting you. And I was like, really? She goes, you need, because I had a huge bruise. I had bruises, and they were starting to hit me where they were visible. So she goes, you need to come to my house, and we'll tell my mom, and then she'll call somebody, and they'll take care of you. So one day after school, I rode the bus home with her, and we went into her house, and we waited for her mother to come home from work. And I remember being so scared. And her mom came home and she told her mom what was going on. And her mom said, you know, you shouldn't have to go back there. So they called my caseworker. And my caseworker came and got me and took me back to Jameson. I never went back to that house. Thank God. And then I was placed with another family and they took in foster girls. One of the best homes I lived in. I still remember where this house is. I know that they had an adopted daughter, and then they had a baby that was a foster kid, and then me, and then another girl. And then there was a husband and wife, and then the husband's mother lived with us as well. And they were so kind and nice, and I mean, I just can't say enough good things about this family. They were just very kind. And then I remember my caseworker coming to me and asking me, do you have any family that you know of? And at this point, even with these two foster homes, I still had visitations with my biological mother. I don't remember how frequent they were, but I remember going to see her from time to time. This video is kind of getting long, so I may have to cut it in half, and I don't know. I don't even know how to do that. I'm going to see if I can. But anyways, I was still visiting her from time to time. I would see her. We would have visitations. She would take me to the park. My mom was always the nicest. She was never nice to me when she had me, but it was all of a sudden when I was a foster kid, she treated me nicely. I mean, I guess because she had to. But I said, well, I think I have a grandma, but I have a brother. Oh, that's another thing, you guys. I have an older biological brother. We don't share the same father, but we share the same mother. I said, I have a brother. My brother, I know, lives with my grandmother, but I don't know where my grandma is. She's in Mexico. At the time, I didn't realize New Mexico and Mexico were two different things. You know, I was little. And so she said, okay, well, we'll look into it. So I don't know how much time had passed, and she came to me and she said, we found your grandmother, and she would like to take you in. Would you like to go live with your grandmother? And at the time, I was like, no, because if I went to New Mexico, I wouldn't see my mom. I wouldn't have visitations with her anymore. So I had a visit coming up with my mom, and I spoke to her, and my mom said, you need to go with your grandma. She can take care of you. She really wants you, and it's the best thing for everybody. So hesitantly, I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. So I went to my grandma's, and that is kind of a hard subject, because as much as I loved my grandma, and I don't want to speak ill of people, especially when they're gone, and I don't want that to be my platform, but my grandmother could have done better with me. My older brother lived with my grandmother, and my grandmother's sister, my Aunt Lupe, they all lived together. So I went to live with my grandma, and my family had started noticing that I seemed to act like I had been abused. And so they sat me down one night and asked me, B, has anybody ever hurt you? And I didn't go into it, but I let them know what had happened, and my grandmother was devastated. I mean, rightfully so. I had an aunt. I had an Aunt Rose, an Aunt Vicky, my mom's brother Jimmy, and then cousins. Most of my family lives out in New Mexico, and so my grandmother had me taken to the doctor, and they confirmed it that I was no longer a virgin, basically. So it was like when my biological brother heard that, it was almost in his head like a green light to start assaulting me. He was, I don't want to say he was in high school at the time, maybe 8th grade, maybe high school. I was in 4th or 5th grade. I turned 10 when I lived with my grandmother. I know that. I had my 10th birthday there. So he started doing what he was doing. So I wanted out of that. I started acting out because he would tell me all the time, because my grandmother adopted my brother when he was a baby. And he would tell me all the time that you could tell them they're not going to believe you. Grandma adopted me. You're here because they called her, not because she wanted you. So I believed him. I was little, of course I believed him. So I never said anything. But when you're in that situation as a child and you don't say anything, you start acting out and being bad. And my Aunt Vicky said, we'll take her. We can handle her better. Because my grandma was older. My Aunt Loopy did most of the parenting because she was in better health condition than my grandmother was. So I went to go live with Vicky. And that turned out to be a mistake as well. Vicky was not kind to me, her or her husband. They hit me all the time. They were not, and I'm not saying it was all bad, but you shouldn't have to endure abuse at all. You know what I mean? It's one thing to spank somebody. It's another thing to beat the shit out of them all the time. And so I finally got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And I remember doing something wrong, and I was going, and she had sent me to the store for a specific thing, and I couldn't find it. So I walked back home, and I was scared to death, because even things that were out of my control, I would get abused for. I would get hit and kicked and whatever. So I was scared to death that I was going to get the crap beat out of me. So it took me forever. And so as I'm walking home, my cousin, one of their children, is walking to find me. And he's like, "What's taking you so long?" She wants to know where. And I said, "I can't find it." So I gave him the money, and he went to go get it. And I'm thinking, as soon as I get home, she's going to beat the ever-loving crap out of me. And so I got scared, and I ran to the the office where the social workers worked, because I knew where it was. And it was closed. But luckily there was a janitor there, and he saw me, so he called the police, and they came and got me, and my social worker came out, and I'm thinking they're going to put me in the car and take me somewhere else. Nope, they took me right back to my aunt's house. So my aunt is acting, "Oh, we didn't know where you were. I was scared to death. Oh my goodness, and is hugging me and crying. And it was late, and she said, "Why don't you," and we're sitting there with the cop, and he's saying, she's saying that you're hurting her. If something's happening, you guys need to do better, and you're going to be investigated, and da-da-da. And she, no, we never would hit her or anything like that. And so my aunt says, you know, it's getting late. Why don't you go brush your teeth and get ready for bed and go get in bed? And I was scared to death. I went in, I brushed my teeth, I put my pajamas on, I'm laying in my bed, and then I hear the door close to the front door, and I know she's coming. And my aunt walks in the room, and she calls me every name in the book. She's talking to me like I'm a grown woman, and just backhands me across the face. How could I put her through that? I'm such a lying bee. I mean, just nasty, awful stuff is spewing out of her mouth. I'm bleeding, and then she starts yelling at me for bleeding because she hit me right in the mouth. Tells me to go to the bathroom, clean myself up. I go home and I cry myself to sleep. So then a few days later, I ran away again, and my social worker had got me. And I told her, you keep taking me back there and I'm going to keep running away. They're hurting me and I'm not going back. They're going to kill me. And so my social worker says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to go back to California. That's where my mother is. I haven't had a visit with her in over 2 years and I miss my mom. So I spoke to my mom on the phone, and when I talked to her, because they put me in a like a temporary home until they could get me to California. And Mary says to me, don't you dare come back here. If you come back here because I'm here, I'll leave. And I'm thinking, what? No. That's exactly what she did. They put me on a plane, sent me back to California. I was put in Jameson for a few days, and then they sent me to Lake Isabella to a foster home. And sure enough, she left. I never got another visit with her again. I would get phone calls from her every now and then, and that was it. She left. She kept her promise, and she left me. I was devastated, to say the least. Devastated. It was awful. I mean, I don't know why I loved her so much and I cared, because she was not a good person. She was just awful. But yeah, she left as soon as I came back to California and never came back. Never. I never had another visit with her again after that. After my last visit before I had left to go to live in New Mexico. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave it today. This video is like 38 minutes deep. This one's a lot longer than my video yesterday. But I'm going to stop there. Finish getting ready to go see the doctor. And I hope you guys have a really great day. It felt good getting that off my chest. I feel lighter. Maybe somebody somewhere out there can relate to this and they know what it was like to grow up like that and to feel like you were completely all alone and nobody cared. Give the people you love the most the biggest hugs and lovies, and tell them you love them with all your heart, and don't stop. Bye.